Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm going to talk about another episode from Season 5, The Last Mustang. If you're enjoying these, please do hit like and subscribe. And if you'd like to know when I'm going to post, hit that notification bell. Early in this episode, we see Grandpa once again sharing his love of nature. And in this case, he is out with John Boy and Jim Bob, and they have spotted this wild Mustang. And Grandpa tells the history of how these wild Mustangs came to be on Walton's Mountain and how he believes this is the last one. We also find out that Ep Bridges is running for re-election as the sheriff, but this time he has competition from a attractive, sophisticated city man. And no one's quite sure why this particular candidate has decided to run for sheriff in this small area. I love this sequence. It's one of those where we just see so much going on. You see Ben and Jason trying to herd chickens back into the coop, which was always an adventure because chickens are really hard to corral and they're going to go where they're going to go. You're not going to be able to direct chickens. So we have that, and then that moves us over to where John and Grandpa are loading a truck. The camera continues. We pick up Reckless and Elizabeth leading Myrtle, heading over towards the barn, where you then pick up John Boy, and he is then moving out of the barn and over past where Grandma and Olivia are hanging laundry, and Aaron is out there helping with something. He heads to the back door. Mary Ellen comes out. So all of this, it's sort of like the chaos of the Waltons, but to put together a shot like this that's all in one and to have the timing of everything, so that would take a little more rehearsal. And it's each actor has to really go at the right time, and the camera has to move at the right time, so a lot of coordination. But when it all comes together, it's just a great shot. And after all of that, we then have our first introduction to this candidate, Glenn Oldfield, played by actor John Fink, and his campaign manager, Arlo Jessup, played by Alan Fudge. Both these actors have done a lot of work over the years, so they probably will look familiar to you. John Boy has written an article in his paper about the two candidates and just basically sharing what they've had to say, their words, but somehow it manages to make Mr. Oldfield, Glenn, look really charming, and Ep seem a little bland, and Olivia and Grandma are sort of saying, well, couldn't you kind of perk Ep up a bit? And John's like, John Boy's, I can't slant the news, but Glenn Oldfield and his manager are interested in talking to John Boy, seeing the press and his paper, and they offer him a job to print some of the paper that he wants to use as handouts. And he's a little skeptical of that because, of course, he's supporting Ep Bridges, and he feels like this might show favoritism, but they're explaining, no, this is just a job and we can pay somebody else to do it. So John Boy, with some hesitation and doubt, agrees to do it. And then shortly after that, he gets mail asking for advertising, people wanting to pay for advertising in the Chronicle. And he's like, I didn't solicit this. And then John gets a contract to build park benches, which he also didn't bid on. So there's a little concern about this is somehow probably tied to the campaign and taking these jobs. Is that going to come back and bite them? But they both say, well, job's a job and money is money. A Professor Ainsley comes to the mountain and he's interested in the Mustang, and he wants to potentially bring it to the college to let them sort of study it, not dissect it or anything like that, but just watch it and everything. And Grandpa's like, no, this is a wild animal. If you take that animal and you put it in captivity, it'll die. Not necessarily, but it certainly would be very unhappy. And then all of a sudden he gets word that someone has captured the Mustang and they have it penned up in town. So of course, Grandpa and some of the others go racing into town to see what's going on. Indeed, the Mustang has been tied and put in a small pen, and it's having it's trying to break free, it's in distress, and Grandpa is equally distraught, saying, how can you cage this wild animal? And he tries to get Epp to back him up on it, but Epp says, there's no proof that you own this animal. Zeb is saying, you took it off of our land. And the person who captured it said, no, it was off of your land. And he says, yeah, you drove it over there. But Epp has his hands tied because he said Zeb has no proof of ownership. And so it's basically a wild horse. And yeah, there's nothing he can do. There is a campaign tea at the Baldwin's house. And Glenn Oldfield is charming all the ladies and singing songs and just... they're so enamored and they're all kind of starry-eyed. Even Mary Ellen, the Baldwin sisters, tease her. They say, what's your marriage? She's like, I can still look. Whereas Epp is sort of a bit of a wallflower over on the side, feeling sort of awkward and out of place. So you're getting the sense that he could lose this election just because he has a tough candidate. Mr. Jessup, the campaign manager, wants to meet with John Boy. John Boy goes and meets him over at the campaign office. He sees how busy and organized and everything that's going on. And then Mr. Jessup confides basically that if John Boy gets on board, that this is really a stepping stone for Glenn Oldfield, that he's going to use it, and within 6 to 9 months he plans to move on, and he has his eye on a position with the state Senate, and that sort of if John Boy gets on board and helps them as part of their team, that they will take him with them and give him all kinds of opportunities. John Boy is like, no, I'm not going to do this. And he says that the people need to know this. And of course, the campaign manager is saying, well, that was told to you off the book. And he's like, you never said that, and it's not off the book, and I am going to print it. So there are threats thrown back and forth. So we get this other side of the not so honest side of politics and campaigning. Meanwhile, Epp is worried about losing this election, and what's he going to do at his age? He never thought that this was a job that he wouldn't do forever, and what's he qualified to do, and to try and be out looking for employment. So he's just feeling a little down and a little concerned that he's going to lose this election. As John Boy is driving home late that evening, he sees the Mustang. The Mustang has gotten loose. It's trailing its rope, and it goes off into the woods. Well, then Carl and his band of guys who are trying to catch it again, they see John Boy, and they're like, which way did he go? He goes, have you seen him? He said, I wouldn't tell you if I had. And so they are determined that they're going to catch this horse, and Carl's going to break it to saddle. So this is not good news. Because of the threats from Arlo Jessup that John Boy will lose the advertising contracts, and that his father can lose any future work in terms of park benches or contracts like that, and could potentially even have the contract for the benches pulled away from him. So John Boy's sitting there with this threat over his head, and he ends up talking with John and explaining what happened. And John's like, well, he understands John Boy has to tell the truth, and they both want to see Epp win, and they don't like the idea of the shady politics and the community being lied to. So at that point, John's like, well, I'm going to finish those benches as fast as possible. And John Boy does say, what did we do for trouble before I started this newspaper? And John basically says, oh, we managed. As Jim Bob delivers the newspapers at Ike's store, Ike and the Baldwins find out about this plan for Oldfield, that he doesn't plan to stick around. And so word is starting to spread about what's going on here. Jim Bob continues on delivering papers, and he's on Blue, and he goes by where Epp is sitting outside the sheriff's office and says John Boy wanted him to have a copy for free. And then you see the point at which Epp realizes what's going on here, and his whole demeanor changes from being worried to a smile on his face, because he knows where this is headed. Grandpa, wanting to be able to protect this Mustang, creates a brand for it. He's built a a Walton, the W for a brand, and he's going to brand this Mustang. And so that way he can keep the horse safe. He doesn't plan to capture it and keep it. He plans to brand it so that it's officially his and he has proof of that, and then the Mustang can be free. So then he is with Kurt and a couple of the boys, and they're going to go find the Mustang. John does indeed receive a telegram canceling the contract for the park benches, and he is upset with himself for thinking that this was a possibility. And Olivia sees this and is able to sort of charm him, cajole him out of his bad mood. And as always, we know they're going to carry on forward, and they're going to find a way through this, find a way to make lemonade. Oldfield actually comes to John Boy's to the newspaper to apologize for what happened. Not that he said he knew about it, but he said it was done in his name. But he basically still says, this is politics, this is how it works. And so, he said that his mistake was in thinking that the Waltons could basically be bought with political favors. And, he learned that lesson. All of the men have gone out to recapture this Mustang. Now, they actually only show it once they've theoretically caught it. So obviously it would have been a far more complicated shot to have them to show how they actually caught it, how they did catch this. Who knows, theoretically, but they did. And Grandpa has built a branding pen, just a loose pen, and they bring the horse into the pen so that it's contained. They cover its eyes, and Grandpa applies the brand. Now, here's a case of editing where you see Grandpa and he's got the brand, but the horse is in between Grandpa and the brand, and so you see it move towards the horse, but you don't actually see it make contact. You also do not see a reaction from the horse. So had it actually been branded, I'm sure it would have at least sort of been a little bit startled by being hit with this brand. But as Grandpa says, it's a little bit of like getting shot or something. It's a little bit of pain or discomfort for a good cause. And so then and then you just see the cut of the edit of the insert of seeing the brand on the horse. They release the horse, and there's just, a lovely sequence of the horse off running free again, in the sense that Grandpa has succeeded in protecting this wild animal. And being a horse lover, I loved that it was a happy ending for the horse. That's what I have for you for this segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons about the episode The Last Mustang. I'll be back with more Behind the Scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.